on the sled, and here comes the law. And I can't remember the guy's name that helped him back then. And so he saw the law coming. He jumped ship, ran, got away. They couldn't find him, or they couldn't find my grandfather. So they took the mules into custody to the jail. And of course, my grandfather never did claim the mules, but they all had a good idea of whose they were. I don't know whatever happened.
The intersection of good drinks, good music, and good times. This is Hops and Spirits Bar Conversations.
I hope everyone had a happy Easter or just a great weekend. We got a great episode for you this week, but before that, if you missed any of our past episodes, like our interview with Frank Ray, Craig Campbell, go to hopspirits.com because you don't want to miss those. And this week, we talk with Tommy Townsend as he has some amazing stories to share with his time with Waylon Jennings. Also, he owns a distillery, so you don't want to miss that for our main conversation. But up next, for Tasting Notes is Kevin Patterson, and we talk spring beers. Let's not waste any more time and get to the show.
Did you know Hops and Spirits is more than just this podcast? Check out hopspirits.com for our latest episode release, past episodes, interviews with interesting folks in the alcohol industry, and so much more. Just go to hopspirits.com. Feel free to wait until this podcast is done.
Back with us once again here on Tasting Notes, and I think it's the first time in 2023, and I'm not sure how that's happened, but we're glad to have him back. He's a Cicerone National Beer Judge. He's also the manager of the Beer Trap Craft Beer Store and Bar in Lexington, Kentucky. Welcome back, Kevin Patterson.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. I thought you forgot about me there for a little while, but I'm glad to see that you didn't, and I'm happy to be back.
I could never do that. You always bring some good knowledge, and it's a good time to talk beer because the weather, hopefully, wherever you are, is getting a little warmer, and maybe you're getting to sit out on the back patio or the front porch or maybe on the sidewalk at the beer trap, which basically means that I think the seasons are changing, and I think that means the beers are changing a little bit too.
Yeah, they do. And one thing I've kind of recognized, and I don't know why I didn't recognize this in previous years, but I feel like the winter to spring transition is one of the biggest transitions in terms of beer that we've seen. And I think the reason why is because there's a big group of people who really love those winter beers, and they're slow to let go of them. And so they kind of want the big, bold flavors, the heavier bodies, the more alcohol. But then there's a lot of other folks that are looking forward to getting the pool open, doing outdoors activities and basking in the sun, and they want a lighter beer to kind of go along with it. So brewers have tough decisions to make. You know, how much of the lean do they put on the seasonal creep versus how much do they hold back and really cater to those people holding on to the bigger beers.
Well, and as we've talked over the years, I feel like some of these beers have now basically become year-round because, like you say, inside it can be whatever you want it to be. So you can drink a sour in the winter and a hefty stout in the summer. But with that said, there are some styles that are a little more prevalent this time of year. And what are those that people will see?
Well, some of the more religious significance, you have the Bock beers, Doppelbocks coming up. And even though those are heavier beers, most people want to drink them whenever it's colder outside. They are traditional springtime beers, built around the Easter holiday and the Lent period that leads up to that. Traditionally, those beers have been what sustained monks during the fasting period of Lent. Can you imagine being in this big castle with a bunch of your brothers and you're not eating anything, you're just drinking all day and all night? It had to be a hell of a party. And so those beers kind of sustain them. So you need those big calorie-heavy beers to kind of do that. So that's your religious connotations with this kind of year. But yeah, I mean, certain other beers, they have that cross-calendar appeal. IPAs, for instance, there's an IPA for every season. If people want hops in the summer, they're going to want them in the winter. And so what you end up with is lighter IPAs, drier, crisper stuff, maybe in the summertime. And then in the wintertime, you have more imperial beers, big on the hazies. And so everywhere in between. So right now, brewers have the decision to make. Do they go a little bit more sessionable with the IPAs that they make to kind of like pull people into the pool season? Or do they want to hold back a little bit and give people the booze they want in an imperial IPA that might go 10, 11%? Sour ales have largely done the same. In the last couple of years, brewers have kind of responded to the need for sour ales, and traditionally we've only thought of those as being kind of summer beers or spring beers, warm weather beers. But that thirst didn't stop once the weather cooled down. So now brewers like, well, people want a sour beer in the winter. Let's just give them a heavier one. Let's give them a bolder one, something with a little bit more alcohol, a little bit more strength. So it's pretty common to see your sour ales go, 7, 8%, maybe even higher, with a lot more of those darker fruit remnants in there. So it really captures the essence of those flavors of the holiday, and without really abandoning the flavor for the sours. Hazy IPAs do the same. Regular IPAs do the same. Even your dark beers, that have been heavy, people still want those dark beers in the summertime too. They just don't necessarily want a 15% dark beer. So the classic beers like Köstritz or Schwarzbier and Dunkels, those kind of pick up a little bit too, because there's a thirst for those. So brewers, have a hard time deciding what to make to appease all palates.
And like you said, there are plenty of those out there now, as everyone pretty much, wants something different. And but like I said, this is kind of the time of year where you see that big change, because you really don't see one in summertime, because what you have in spring is kind of still what you're going to have in the summer. But obviously, I feel like we get a little bit more toward the fruit side of things, and you'll see some strawberry lagers, strawberry kolsches, things like that, more so than you would other times.
You do. What brewers have a tendency to push deeper into spring, deeper into summer right now, instead of holding back on winter. Well, they're all on board when it becomes summertime, so you don't really see much of a transition from spring to summer. You just see more of those, springtime beers that lean summery just become more prevalent during the summer. So yeah, more wheat beers, more lagers, more lighter IPAs, and the fruits there in abundance that time of year. Everybody kind of eating fruit salads and whatnot. So beer makers respond to that, and they're like, all right, let's give people that lighter fare that they kind of want. Beer drinkers, though, they've gotten to the point where, like, we don't mind having summery flavors, but we don't want a weak beer. What we used to call session ales, they had a brief uptick there, for 4 or 5 years, maybe a decade ago. But now people are like, we do want lighter alcohol beers, but they can't have a weak body. They can't be watery. They can't have this thin mouthfeel. We still want beers that have this sort of sense of boldness and flavor and a texture to match, without necessarily carrying all the calories or all the heaviness associated with the mouthfeel of an imperial ale.
So basically, they're challenging brewers to step their game up.
They really are, and the good news is the access to beers now is greater than it's ever been. Certainly, your local breweries, they carry a lot of things, and they can have a portfolio that might go, 20, 25 beers. But drinkers now, they can mail order stuff to Kentucky pretty easily, so they're having a tendency to get beers out of market that might be ahead of where local brewers are, and so they're drinking those beers, and they're going to their local brewery, and they're like, hey, I had this the other day, can you make one of these? So it's helping everybody kind of up the game a little bit to create bigger, bolder, flavorful beers, error-free, and do it without sacrificing that body or that flavor that they kind of want in those other brands.
Well, like I said, it's an exciting time in the beer world, because, like I said, obviously, the styles begin to change, things begin to change. Although I think one that I always used to look forward to this time of year was the Oberon, and I think that's just out all year now.
Yeah, people will come in, they'll sort of say, hey, is Oberon out yet? I'm like, no, it's a seasonal beer. Now I know it goes 11 months of the year, but we're calling that 1 month when Oberon's not available. But it'll be available very shortly, so don't worry about that.
Well, Kevin, I appreciate the knowledge as always, and thank you so much for sharing it.
My pleasure, Jonathan. Thank you.
Check out Hops and Spirits on social media at Hops Spirits, all one word, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also find Hops and Spirits on YouTube and at hopspirits.com.
Joining us here for our conversation, he's a country artist, songwriter, and he dabbles a little bit on the business side of things. He's the founder of Granddaddy Mim's Distilling. Welcome in, Tommy Townsend.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Yeah, we met for a few minutes in Lexington a couple weeks ago, didn't we? Or 3 weeks ago.
Next time though, you'll have to stick around a little longer. We'll have to share some drinks.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
And I say that because I think you got some good drinks that we're going to be talking about, along with some good music. But before we get into all that, this is Bar Conversations. What's your go-to drink, or what are you drinking tonight?
What I'm drinking tonight is actually our 85 proof peach whiskey.
Mm.
Yeah, so
I like it.
That or the peach moonshine, just on ice, is my go-to drink every time.
I can see why. I opened the peach moonshine,
Yeah.
96 proof, and the second drink sip was even better than the first. And eventually, I'm going to crack into this bad boy as we talk.
Yeah.
The little 5-year Granddaddy Mim's Georgia whiskey.
That's a good one. Yeah.
So I'm excited to talk about these, but it's interesting. You're a musician by trade, but you got into the moonshine business.
Yeah, and that was just a fluke conversation I had with a friend of mine, and he's from Anaheim, California, and we were out around Lubbock, Texas, when the conversation got started, and it was just like I say, a fluke conversation that this all came about.
And what now? Obviously, though, I believe Granddaddy Mim's is named after someone that's pretty close to you, right?
Yeah, he was my grandfather. His name was Jack McClure, and all of the grandkids called him Mimmy, or later on it got shortened to Mim for some reason. But the oldest grandchild, Terry Roberts, started calling him Mimmy, as you know, instead of Grandpa or Granddaddy or whatever. So that's where it came from. It was from my cousin Terry Roberts.
And is it true that it's his recipe for the moonshine?
Yes, it is. It sure is. When we first started all of this, it's all the conversation actually with Jack Keeter and I started in 2011. And he was like, "Can you get your hands on the recipe?" He said, "If you can, I'll help you back it." And so I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." I said, I don't remember my grandfather. I was like a year old or something when he passed away. And I said, "I don't remember him, but I just remember stories, and I'll see what I can do." I've heard, like, my mom is my mom's dad. And I've heard stories down through the years about him bootlegging and all the stuff. And so when I got back to Nashville, I called my mom and asked her I said, "Do you know anything about Mimi's moonshine recipes?" And she said, "Well, son," she said, I don't really know. Said, "I remember just people coming in and out of the house all hours of the night and buying liquor and this and that." And she said, "But call your Uncle George," said he helped him make some before he went into service. So I called my Uncle George, and he said, "Yeah." He goes, "I don't know that there was ever a written down recipe, but he said, I know exactly how we did it." So he emailed that to me, and it went from there. That's how it all got started.
Now, when did you actually make the business happen? Because obviously, if anyone knows about the liquor business, it does not move quickly when you're trying to get licenses and all that good stuff.
No, it took a couple years to get all the licensing. We actually started the company in 2012, and then we had another distillery down in Middle Georgia that made it for us for a while, and then we set up the distillery in Blairsville, Georgia in 2016. So it took that long, to start getting everything and start making it in Blairsville, Georgia. So, but yeah, it's not it's a hurry up and wait process. And it's so funny. I told my wife what I wanted to do, and she's like, "Yeah, right," And her being an overachiever, she actually sat down and did all of the licensing, and she or I, neither one knew anything about making liquor or producing liquor or anything about anything that they had. We had to answer questions for on all of the stuff, we had to fill out. So we were going to get, like I say, an attorney to fill out all the paperwork for us, and like I say, Christy, her being an overachiever, a school teacher, and all that, she's like, "Oh, I can do this myself." So she had made friends with the TTB agent in Cincinnati, Ohio, and who's still our Georgia Department of Revenue agent in Gainesville, Georgia, and they helped her.
Hey,
So,
that's a smart lady right there.
yeah, it is, and it saved us a bunch of money, and so yeah,
I love that.
it started.
Uh,
And,
that is awesome, and obviously you're part of the business now. Do they let you around the equipment to make anything, or are you like permanently like kicked out?
kicked it. Well, no, that I can do actually a little bit of all of it. We have distillers that make it, and I've made it with them. I haven't never made a run on my own, but yeah, I can do that. I can bottle it. I can label it. I can proof it. I learned all of it, and it was so funny. Back when we first got started, and this was all started as a hobby. It was nothing ever intended to what it's grown to now, and so I remember I was home from the road for just a few days, and came down to Blairsville, and so I thought, well, I want to try to figure out how to mix all this stuff, and so I went over to the distillery like at 9 a.m. in the morning, hadn't eaten breakfast or anything, and eager to start diving into it, and so after about 30 minutes of a little mixing, a little drinking and stuff, I had to sit down.
No, maybe not the best choice for breakfast, right?
Probably not, yeah. Yeah, I had to sit there about 10 minutes before I could even drive home. Or no, probably an hour.
But you are legitimately part of the business. When we met in
Yeah.
Lexington, you're not bootlegging, but you're kind of running and doing stuff, and you're out there helping sell it.
Yeah, I love, when I have time to go out to the stores and see them and taste the store owners, and that's a ton of fun. We sold a bunch in the Lexington area. When I met you that day, we'd visited new stores that we hadn't been in and stuff, and so everybody likes it. And I was actually 2 weeks ago. I was in Savannah with Burton. You met Burton. It was with he's our sales rep for the company, and one of the guys in one of the stores said, "Man, we love it. You're the one of the owner of it, the founder, and you came in to see us." He said that never happens. He said there was a nephew of one of the huge companies came in one time, but he said, "Man, that's special when the owner comes in." And so I try to do that as much as I can.
Well, and you got a good product to sell, because I love that it's a moonshine that's upwards of like what a moonshine should be. It's not 80 proof, 60 proof. It's the peach is 96 proof.
Yeah, and we have some of the lighter proofs or whatever too, just something for everybody. But all the high proof flavors that we have, and the just straight corn liquor, it's all up there. It's 100, 140 proof, something like that. So, and what's surprisingly is the 140 proof is probably our best seller in liquor stores.
Because it's not there much. It's just not there.
No, it's not. It's too hot for me to drink. I can kind of take a little sip of it, but we always tell bartenders or something like that. So think of it this way: you can get you can get double the pours out of the bottle.
That is very true. Now, do you have a favorite? You got the moonshine, you got the whiskey, you even got a little bit of vodka. Do you have a favorite, or is it just something flavored with peach?
Well, yeah, I love peach, so we did the peach whiskey, and this is just a young whiskey that we did flavored it, and then I love the 96 peach moonshine, and I like stuff with a little burn. I like to know I'm drinking liquor, but one of my favorite as far as drinks, I love margaritas, and so we do moonshine margaritas too, with the 140 proof, and like I say, you can get a little bit of that burn, and know you're drinking a margarita too. So
I like that. Now, before we went on air, you were telling me you had a little bit of fun too with the moonshine and doing a little barrel aging too.
Yeah, we and back in 2018, we started putting our moonshine in bourbon barrels, used bourbon barrels, and so last year, or no, I guess it was 2021. We the fall of 21, we released our first barrel, and we put it in at about 120 proof, and and it came out, little little less than that, that one particular barrel, and we didn't have enough to distribute, but we sold it at the distillery, and we sold that whole barrel in like, I don't know, 2 weeks. We had people calling, reserving bottles of it, and so we got to doing that, and we thought, and this is back, we weren't making as much as we are now, and we thought, okay, every time we have some, extra liquor, we'll throw it in a barrel. So we were, every couple months we was putting a barrel back, and now we put about 4 or 5 barrels back a month. We have a total of 68 barrels filled with liquor, and so we just released the first 3 barrels to liquor stores in Georgia, and Florida's interested in them, Kentucky's interested in them, but we'll have 12 ready this year. So hopefully you'll get one up there around Kentucky this year.
I love it because it's fun to see that, and especially when you actually age it, not just there for a little while, but let it actually sit there and soak in those flavors, because that can add a little bit to it and take a little bit of that edge off on the backside.
Yeah, and it's got it's kind of got the bourbon profile, with it, because you got the oaky thing, the oaky and the wood and all that. But there's a story behind aging it too that my grandfather did. He used to put it in wooden barrels back a long time ago, every once in a while, and instead of him and my uncle Abel would make it, and they put it in a barrel every once in a while when they had enough, and they called it, instead of charred, the old Southern slang, they call it chartered. For some, I don't know. My cousin Terry again was telling me about that, because he was actually old enough to be around my grandfather, and when he was early teens, and helped him make it and run it and stuff. So I know there's one story that Terry had told me that my grandfather and Terry would sit on the front porch, and Terry said he'd spend the night with my grandmother and my grandfather in the summertime, and so I guess my grandfather had a habit of one of those Zippo lighters, because he smoked those Prince Albert rolled up cigarettes, and so he said that he'd sit out there in the rocking chair and swing back and forth, and he'd flick the lighter, with his thumb, click, 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 and so Terry said he would sit in the swing, and he said the law would come up, or some of the revenue people would come up, and my grandfather would say, "Boy, you know what to do." So Terry would go get the liquor, put it in the law car, and everything would be good.
I love so it's one of those things where you hear all those places. Oh, I found this, and it's a make believe story, but no, this is real life. Fun,
real life, yeah.
Fun stories to share that are true and make it even more enjoyable.
Oh, I know, yeah, and I mean, I don't know how long we got, but I can tell you a ton of stories. But one time they used to make liquor, and it was at the end of, I guess at the end or the beginning of Gumlog Road over in Young Harris, Georgia, and it was a place called the County Farm, and so they used to haul sugar in on a sled, pull with the mules, so they wouldn't have to carry it so far back in the woods, and so they had loaded some sugar on the sled, and here comes the law, and I can't remember the guy's name that helped them back then, and so he saw the law coming. He jumped ship, ran, got away, and they couldn't find him, or they couldn't find my grandfather, so they took the mules into custody to the jail. And of course, my grandfather never did claim the mules, but they all had a good idea of whose they were. don't know whatever happened to mules. I guess they sold them or something. I don't know.
Oh, see, and this is what I enjoy about having drinks and having fun conversations. And
Yeah.
what's extra crazy too is you're pretty good at music.
Yeah, I've played a song or two over the years.
So when did you get into music?
Oh my gosh, as far back as I can remember, I've loved music. My dad was a player. He played bluegrass, and he was actually offered a job with Bill Monroe back in the late '50s, and he had turned it down because him and my mom had just gotten married and stuff, and he'd always told me, he said that if he had known that he was going to have a son, he was going to do professional music one of these days, he'd loved to have done it just to share stories with me. But my dad played in square dance bands, and stuff around Georgia, and with my cousins and all that, and so yeah, that's how I got into music. I've always loved it, all kinds of music, not just country music, but all kinds of music.
And you got a pretty good one that kind of had a pretty big impact on you, and that was Waylon.
Yeah, Waylon had a huge influence on my career. I guess my parents were fans of his, and I remember going and seeing him back when I was about 13 years old, and I was already a fan because my mom and dad had all the records and tapes and everything, and so my Hell's Angels did security for Waylon back then. This is in like the mid '80s or whatever, and so my mom and dad got to talking to one of them and tell them that I liked him and stuff, and so he said, "Well, bring Tommy down here to the side of the stage after the show, and we'll take him back there and meet him." And so, I went down there, and his name was Rick, but there was 3 or 4 of them there was Boomer and Deacon. He was actually the head of the Hell's Angels chapter in Oakland. They were all there. Rick was the one that actually kind of came out and got me, and took me back there and took me on Waylon's bus, and we spent, oh gosh, I don't know, probably 30 or 45 minutes just talking. He was just as nice as he could be to me, and that struck up a friendship, and we got to know the band and the crew and all of that. And then every time they were around, like the North Georgia, Atlanta area, or North Carolina or Chattanooga, we'd always go see them, because they were around 2 or 3 times a year. And then I guess when I was 15, I had done a little tape with a friend of mine that had a little studio, and I gave it to Waylon. And I guess the next time I saw him, we were talking about it, and he's like, when you get old enough, I'd like to start working with you. So I was a senior in high school, and him and Waylon and his bass player Jerry Bridges started working with me. Jerry took me in the studio first. Waylon, I remember when we went in the studio, Waylon was filming the movie Stagecoach with Johnny Cash and Willie and I think it's Chris Christopherson. So he wasn't there at that particular session, so Jigger produced that, and then Waylon came in about a year or so later and started. He and Jerry produced stuff on me up until the late '90s.
I mean, is it crazy to think back to that you were at 13, 14, in teenage years, just hanging out with Waylon and working with him?
It's funny. At the time, you're young and dumb and everything. I didn't really think that much about it. I thought it was cool or whatever, but yeah, and when I was I had just graduated high school, and Waylon invited me to go out on stage a few times and play music with him, and he would let me do "Mamas Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys" with him, and "Good Hearted Woman" with him, and here I am, just 18 years old doing that with them, and did that a lot through the years till he passed away. Yeah, but
and now you said like Waylon was a big influence. Who were some maybe other big influences on you? Because
I guess the first song that I can ever really remember singing was my mom and dad were big country music fans, and it was Conway Twitty's "Only Make Believe." That was I loved his singing. I loved I got into Hank Williams Jr. And Vern Gosdin, and then later when Keith Whitley came along, I got into his music. And I've always said if you probably take Waylon Jennings and Conway Twitty and Keith Whitley and Vern Gosdin and you cook them in a pot all day, you got Tommy Townsend. So
It's not a bad recipe. That's not a bad recipe.
not at all. But yeah, I love. That's kind of the ones that influence me and my singing style today, you know. So of course I don't do new country at all, and modern radio wouldn't touch me with a 10-foot pole, but but I do get a lot of play on the Americana and Outlaw, Sirius XM Outlaw and stuff like that.
Well, I was gonna say, in last year you put out an album, Southern Man, and while it's new in the sense that it's out now, it's not exactly new in the sense of when some of those songs were originally recorded.
Oh yeah, I mean, Southern Man was one of the first songs we ever cut in the late '80s. You know, and I was in my 19, something like that, when that was done, and a few of those other songs on the album, and then. Like I say, in the late '90s, Jerry and Waylon took me back in the studio again, and we recorded some more stuff. And then it never did find a home at that time. And then Waylon passed away, and it just laid around, in my closet or actually in my parents' closet for a long time, and until Craig Campbell, my good friend Craig Campbell that does management and publicity and everything with me. He had got in touch with Chuck Rhodes at BFD Audio, Nashville. And so they loved the album and wanted to ask me if it was okay to put it out. And I'm like, yeah, because this I've always thought it was a great album. It just never, got the shot at that time. And then I remember Waylon told me one time, the last time we were recording, and we were sitting in the lounge at the studio there on 18th Avenue, right across from the Music Mill. I don't know if you're familiar with the Music Mill. That's where Alabama recorded all their stuff. And we're sitting in there, and Waylon said, "You know what?" He goes, "I would take this to record labels, but," he said, "they would probably do something, say something about you or about me, and it would piss me off, and I would ruin your career."
So he was thoughtful,
He
very
was thoughtful. Yeah, he was truthful, but he was such a nice man, and everything that he did, he and Jigger did with me. They did it just, they liked my singing and stuff. So I thought that was always cool.
Well, and like you said, Southern Man actually has Waylon on the track.
Yeah,
and it's probably one of the last ones that we made that ever might see the light of day. That's kind of new from that had him on there. But you went back in and kind of added a little bit of touch up to it, correct?
We did that, and the label remastered it and beefed up everything to make it sound the way it does now. I didn't write any of the songs on it because at that time I wasn't writing because I was too young to write. Especially the songs I was singing about on that
You didn't
record.
have those life experiences yet?
I hadn't had near those life experiences yet, I maybe had a girlfriend or two or something, I don't know, but that's about it. But there's like writers on there. Dean Dillon, he wrote one of the songs. Roger Murrah that wrote countless #1 country songs for Alan Jackson or wrote with Alan Jackson and Alabama and all that. Him and Fred Knobloch and who else is on there? Waylon and Troy Seals wrote one of the songs. But yeah, Waylon is singing on several of those things and playing guitar on it too. So that's just if it never did anything, I'd cherish that that I have that.
I was gonna say, I mean, at the end of the day, how cool is it to see Southern Man just have that chance to be out there and folks to really enjoy it?
And it's done really well. We've had tons and tons and tons of downloads and streams and all that, and then it actually came out on vinyl Record Store Day this past the Friday after Thanksgiving, It was released on limited amount of vinyl. I think it was, I don't know, a couple thousand, and it sold out in a day. It surely did. I bought 100 copies, but just to have, to sell at the distillery or take out with me or whatever. And actually they actually printed a few more for me that I got.
Well, I mean, if there was someone to do that for, it might be you.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you can go to TommyTownsendMusic.com and order an album, and it's in some of the vinyl stores, that's scattered across the country, because vinyl's popping back up now.
I was going to say vinyl outsold CDs this past year.
It did. I saw that article about that. Yeah.
See, all things come back around. So even that old school country that folks think about, it's coming back.
It is. It surely is. I reckon cassettes and 8-tracks may come back.
I don't know about that. I don't know.
Coming back a little bit. Cassettes are. I don't know about the 8-tracks. That I can just barely remember those, but I do remember.
See, now I remember cassettes because I had that as my main. I had the Trackman type CD player that I had to have the cassette player to actually play in the car. That was how I got to listen to music.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and make mixtapes on. Remember the mixtapes?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, those were good old days, and you had some good old days too, because there for a while after Waylon passed, you were playing and fronting Waymore's Outlaws. What was that like?
Yeah, that was a great experience too. Yeah, in 2000, I think this was 2008. The band decided to get back together, and they asked me if I would consider fronting the band, and I'm like, I didn't have to think about that for just a second, because Richie Albright and Jigger, Jerry Bridges, everybody calls him Jigger. So if you hear me reference as Jigger, it's Jerry Bridges. But they were getting the band back together and wanted to go out and do some shows, and they asked me if I'd front the band, and I'm like, well, heck yeah, you don't have to ask me about that. So we did that up until 2020, actually. So, I mean, then we toured with Shooter Jennings about 5 of those years, really heavy. And and of course, 2020, nobody worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we actually, Richie Albright passed away in 2021. And Jeff Bridges, Jerry's son, plays drums now. And we don't really tour anymore. But we go out and do, one-offs here and there, or play around Nashville, in the surrounding areas of Nashville or something. But we're actually, me and Jerry and Fred Newell, the steel guitar player, or this weekend we'll be in Riverton, Illinois, and Belleville, Illinois, which is right outside St. Louis. We're doing a couple of listening rooms, and that's going to be fun. We haven't done that before, the 3 of us. So I'm looking forward to going up there and doing those shows at where's it? The Backroom Lounge, and actually our liquor's distributed in Illinois, so we're bringing the liquor in and do a promotion with that, and do a bottle signing Friday afternoon from 3 to 6 at the Riverton Party Store in Riverton, Illinois, and then Saturday night we're playing in Belleville at the Venue on Main. That one's sold out, actually. All 10 seats.
Everything else is standing room only.
That's right.
But I mean, like, when you think back, I know I asked this earlier about, when you look back and getting to play with Waylon, but just like your journey, your career, that you got to work with Waylon, Shooter, the Jennings Clan, then play with Waymore and things like that. I mean, I know it's weird to kind of take that step back at times because you're still doing stuff, but do you ever do that and take that step back and just look at where you've been and everything you've gotten to do?
Since I've gotten older, I do. I didn't used to, but I kind of do now. And I didn't with the thing that about going back and thinking how cool was that to be do that with Waylon and all that. That actually hit me not long after he passed away, and I'm not name dropping at all, but we're friends with the Cyrus, Billy Ray and Tish, and matter of fact, my daughter Megan and Molly grew up together, and we were at a school dance one night when the girls were in elementary school, and Billy Ray and I were sitting there talking and on the bleachers. And he said, "How cool was that you got to do all that stuff with Waylon?" And I guess it was that moment when he, asked me about it that I thought, that was really cool. You're the one with all the money.
But it's those memories that last.
But yeah, but it kind of, and then, and sort of, and then when we started on the road with Waymore's Outlaws, or when I did. It was so fun. Every time, we're going down the road or something, there's always a story about all the stuff back then and what they did and how they did it. It's just, it was great. So I would love to have a tape recorder or something and just tape Richie and Jigger and all them just talking about all that. But I do have a pretty good memory, and I remember most of everything they talked about. So. Yeah.
Well, and I know when you and I were talking, a little whiles back when you were in Lexington, and you're doing some shows and kind of those fun shows with Granddaddy Mims, but also being able to just share these stories. Like, how cool is it to be able to share some of these things with folks?
Yeah, it is, and that's kind of what we're doing this weekend in Illinois with Jerry and Fred Newell. Is I'll be able to share stories about, my grandfather and tell stories about that. And then we'll do and tell stories about Waylon. And, although I wasn't around during the crazy years or whatever, I still have great memories of when I met Waylon. He had already kind of, kicked the drug habit and all that.
He started behaving.
I guess. But yeah, that's going to be fun to do that. And then there'll be, you'll think of one story, then something else will come up. But we'll do stories and songs. That's kind of what we're doing with that. So it'll be fun.
I was gonna say that's a great time, and obviously you released Southern Man, last year. Any new music or any other fun things maybe coming this way that you can tell me and not get yourself in trouble?
Yeah, maybe so. I tell you, we've kind of started on another record. I've done some pre-production on some stuff that, a few weeks ago. But have you ever heard of the rapper? And his name is Playa Poncho, and he's from Atlanta. And he had a huge record several years ago called "What's Up, What's Up." And of course I don't remember that either, but other people do because I never listened to rap. I've always loved the rap beats, all that, I've always loved that, but anyway, he and I had met back in October. And so, it was through the liquor business is how we met. And he actually came to the distillery and we visited all day one day, him and one of his, guys, that works with him. And, so he had listened to my music and I had listened to some of his, and we all went and played golf together that day and just, got just hung out. And so he was telling me kind of at the end of the day, he's like, "Man, we need to collaborate on some stuff." And, cross country music with, hip hop. And of course that's kind of being done in Nashville now a little bit, but we're taking it a little bit farther than that. We're when we recorded in Atlanta, last week, so I don't know how much I can tell you. I'm trying to dance around the deal here. Anyway, I'm just going to tell you, it's just a cool story. But anyway, so we went in without a plan. I mean, with nothing. And so, like I say, the kind of country rap stuff that's going on in Nashville now. Well, I took a steel guitar player with me. and then I took my Telecaster with me. And so when Tim set his steel guitar up in that studio, you'd think a spaceship landed in there. Because there ain't nobody ever seen that, in the hip hop community. Well, so we didn't have a plan of anything, and we were just going to just sort of vibe and see what becomes of it. Because usually with country music, you write your songs, you have the studio players, you go in, you have a plan. It's an intro, it's a verse, it's a chorus, it's all that. And so we had nothing, and they turned on that drum beat thing and Tim and I just started playing with it, just back and forth, because we've played together a lot over the past few years, and then Pancho just starts rapping this stuff, and so several hours later, on into the night, we came out with a song. And I tell you what, it's one of the songs that I am most proud of in anything I've done. And I can't wait for everybody to hear it. I'm not sure when it'll come out, or if it'll come out, but no, it'll come out one way or another. But we came out with something that's very, very special. And it's traditional country with my Telecaster twang and Tim's steel guitar, and some bluegrass harmonies in there, with that real hip hop beat, and it's something very special. And I guarantee you, when you hear the song, you will not be able to get it out of your head.
I like it.
It's that cool. I mean, it really is. And we're planning on, we might possibly do an EP together.
Ooh, I like it even better.
Yeah, and like I say, it's like nothing that you've heard in the country rap or anything like that. It's twangy Telecaster and steel guitar and bluegrass harmonies. I like it. On top of all of the hip hop stuff, and so they're going to do some more stuff with it. Matter of fact, I'm traveling. I'm going back in the studio with them tomorrow. We're going to do the second verse, and Pancho and me and Tim all collaborated on the song, and it's something very, very special, and I can't wait for you to hear it.
I like it because I saw that on your socials, so I knew you were doing something fun. But I like a good tease, and folks, if you're not following them, I recommend it. And if you're not following like Granddaddy Mims, that's fun too, because I enjoy watching y'all have a good time down there. It's not just a regular distillery like that people think of.
No, everybody works there as we recognize them as family, because almost every one of them has been with us since we started. And it's like everybody knows what to do and when to do it, and you don't have to boss people around, or nobody else has to. Everybody just kind of knows what to do, and that makes it a very easy work environment. And like I say, I'm there quite a bit too, so sometimes they tell me what to do.
Got to keep you in line on occasion too.
Keep me in line, but that's a lot of fun doing that. So I enjoy getting my hands dirty.
And I guess my last question is, what else can folks expect from you the rest of 2023?
We'll be out doing some shows here and there, and doing some more recording. And like I say, with being Playa Pancho, you'll hopefully hear some of that later on this year. And so it's just a lot of exciting things. Then I'm working on another record too, so myself. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm having more fun now with it, and got the creative juices flowing again and all that. So that's a lot of fun.
That is awesome. And Tommy, thanks for sharing a few drinks with me, a little moonshine, a little whiskey, and sharing some stories too.
Yeah, anytime. I love it. Thanks for having me on.
Find more from Hops and Spirits at hopspirits.com.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.